Welcome to Rogue Bogues, episode 39 of the basketball series. Myself and Mike Procopio, Hoop Consultants. I am live talking from basically my hospital ward, Pro. I'm fresh out of nasal surgery, so for all the listeners out there, this is the kind of dedication I have towards the podcast. But I'm not going to lie, I'm struggling, Pro. I'm really struggling.
Bogues, what the fuck? Like, you know what? It's funny. We did the call-in. You sounded like you had something going on. Did something flare up, or did you just say, hey, you know, I got nothing going on, I might as well get this thing done now rather than a year from now or 10 years from now? Well,
oh, yeah, no, it's
good?
So I've broken my nose. I think I've broken my nose 7 times, I think, playing professionally. So different parts of my nose have broke 7 times from elbows and whatever. You know, they've always told me there's no point in getting it perfectly fixed while you're playing, because if it gets hit again, the whole surgery's then pointless. So finally got scheduled in. I was getting shit from people that, you know, saw my Instagram videos when I did the selfie videos about my nostrils looking very, very silly because one was massive, one was small. But finally got it fixed. But yeah, it's a brutal surgery, man. So he had to, the surgeon had to break my nose back into place.
Ooh.
Get out all the scar tissue and swelling. And yeah, I'm on day, what am I? I had it on Wednesday, Sunday here now. But I'm just starting to feel better, man. I was high on oxycodone and all that kind of shit for the last 3 or 4 days, barely being able to sleep. But like I said, it's dedication to the podcast, Pro. I'm here. I'm ready to go.
Hey, Bogues, no one could ever said you're not a fucking Iron Man. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. And before we start up, I want to apologize to everybody for my again, you don't see this in the media ever, but I fucked up last week about the Atlanta Hawks deal with Collins' contract. I read the headline while we were going over it, and it said, I didn't notice the Trae Young. I thought they gave him $207 million, and that's what I'm saying, throwing the fucking money out the window. And then, you know, it's sort of like buying a Nissan Altima for $275,000. I love the Nissan Altima. I'll always get them, but I'm not going to pay $270,000 for a fucking Nissan Altima. And I like Collins as a player, but not for $207 million. But in reality, I think the contract was a little over, it was over 100, but not the 200. That was Trae Young's deal. So
clickbait. You got clickbaited by the headline.
Yeah, I will take the fucking hit on that one, Bogues. Unlike 99.9% of the media, I will admit when I fuck up.
Oh, we all make mistakes. That's all good. Not an issue whatsoever. But
sweet.
Anyway, I don't recommend anyone get nasal surgery soon. That's one thing I'm not recommending, but we'll get started. We're going to go through our West predictions. We are a few days late because there have been a couple of games, but it has given us a little scope into what teams are looking like. But we're going to do our West breakdown. We did our East last week, so if you haven't seen that, go through that. Playoff bound or bounced. We'll start with the Utah Jazz, Pro. This one's an obvious one. It's bound. They'll be close, in my opinion, to being the best regular season team again. I think they have a very solid team, very good regular season team with the grind of the regular season. They'll win a lot of games. They'll be up there in the West. Can they surge in the playoffs, though? That's the big question around the Utah Jazz. They've had great regular seasons the last couple of years, but they seem to get bounced. Can they adapt to the small ball that teams generally go to with Rudy Gobert in the game? Can Rudy play versus those small ball lineups in a playoff series is a big question. They are the beacon of consistency. They do really, really well day to day, like I said. I don't mind the Hassan Whiteside pickup, but he's a very similar player to Rudy in a way, where he's a shot blocking, rebounding big. He's not going to bring you a lot of perimeter play. So if teams do go small, you probably can't even play him that much. The Rudy Gay pickup, I think that helps a little bit. He's another scoring threat when he's healthy. They can get a bucket with his size and length. So I think he'll help him in that capacity. But look, if they don't go deep into the playoffs, we thought this roster would be tweaked already, but it's not. But this is probably their last hurrah to push all their chips to the table to try and, you know, get to a championship series. Pro, what are your thoughts on the Utah Jazz?
Bogues, I sort of mirror everything you just said as far as the lineup. They're consistent. They could kill you in the regular season. They could hurt you in the playoffs. But then they get hurt when they get deeper into the playoffs. I think having the offensive firepower, you know, to really get by teams and you know, like Donovan Mitchell, obviously he's got to be clicking, and then those other guys got to make shots, right? Like, you know, Conley's injury hurt them last year in the playoffs for sure. But like Bogdanovich, Ingles, you know, those guys can make shots. And Clarkson, you know, he's either really on or really not. You know, so just having that consistent, they don't really have that consistent like really good number 2 offensively. They've got a bunch of guys that are good players and really solid, but that's sort of what they lack. But I'll tell you, if you're gonna hit any year, Bogues, without with the Clippers, the Lakers going through their shit show they're going through now. Obviously, it's only 2 games, but then obviously the Clippers, you don't know what's going to happen with Kawhi Leonard. If you're gonna make a run, I think this year is definitely. In the West, this year is definitely going to be the year. Golden State, they got guys coming back, but, you don't know how Klay's going to be, coming back for this season and how that's going to get impacted or affected. But, I mean, I really like them. They got a really good coach. They got good players. They got a solid system. They play really well. They share the ball. But I think when it comes down to it in the playoffs, Bogues, I think having that second go-to scorer consistently is going to be a problem. Gobert struggles a little bit with those small lineups on those switching things and getting by guys sometimes, guys getting by him. And then offensively, not having another shooter on the floor and having him in there in the playoffs is, especially when teams go small, it's an interesting dilemma. They're obviously playoff bound. I just don't know how deep they can go. I don't really see them winning a championship this year. I think they're going to have to make some changes long term if that to happen, but I think they could definitely knock on the door, possibly get to a conference final.
Yeah, I would agree. Hopefully they can prove us wrong, but they are a great team. They're very, very solid, but they can't get over the line when it's crunch time. Denver Nuggets, playoff bound. If Murray gets healthy, I think it'll help, but I see much of the same for Denver as last season, in my opinion. Even with Murray healthy, I don't think their roster's improved that much. I think they'll be a second-round exit team max. I think that's a good year for them. They get to the second round. I don't think they'll get further than that. I mean, Jokic's usage is insane. I mean, he's so fun to watch. I love everything he does. The other issue is if he gets any kind of an injury or he's out for any amount of games, I don't see them winning anything. So they have a lot of pressure hoisted on the MVP, but He'll take that in stride. He's playing very, very good basketball. But yeah, I just don't see Denver improving too much on what they did last season. I think that's kind of the max for this roster and what they're going to do. Playoff bound, but second round exit. Pro.
Yeah, same, Bogues. I mean, I just think with with their situation, I don't know if they have enough shooting around Jokic to a consistent perimeter shooting to go deep. They don't have that other guy that they can go to. They got to rely on him to do everything: pass, score in the post. Shoot the ball. He doesn't really play much defense, but it doesn't really matter. Like, they got a good team. They're solid. They got a good coach. They play hard. They're a team that you root for. You want them to go far, right? And I think, they could possibly get to a conference final, but I could see them winning a round and then going deep in round 2. But, again, I just think they come up with the same problems. They got to get more shooting. They got to get that. Now, Michael Porter Jr., I mean, he's the one guy that could really make a big leap. I mean, he made a leap last year, but I think he might have another gear that he can go to, another level that he can go to. He's struggling a little bit this year to find his rhythm at only 11 a game, but I could see him sort of really helping this team. But yeah, I don't see them really making a huge run, but I could see them definitely getting into the second round.
Agree. Much of the same. Portland, I got them playoff bound with a caveat. They'll be a play-in team, in my opinion, if they make the playoffs. Look, they can get buckets. They can score with the best of them. They still don't play no defense. Do they make a trade? Does CJ stay? Does Dame stay? They're all the question marks. But if they can just buy into a little bit of defense, which is easier said than done when you don't have defenders, that's a big, big part of it. If they can just get from a bottom 10 team defensively to middle of the pack, they can have a much more successful year. I think they scrape in the playoffs just based on their scoring. They can get buckets. They can shoot you out of the gym on any given night. But as far as making any noise in the playoffs or actually having a performance where they can get to the second or third round, I don't think they will. I think they'll be lucky to get into a playing game this season, and that's kind of their max for me. What do you got?
Folks, if there wasn't a 10, if there wasn't a play-in, I would say they're out. I don't think they're going to finish in the top 8. Possibility of missing, I don't think they upgraded. I think they're the same old story. Like, Lillard and McCollum are going to score. Norman Powell's a good player. But they just don't have enough. This team has played the same way year in and year out. They're an offensive team with a small backcourt. They're a very talented backcourt, but small. and they don't play defense. And it's not, even if they're locked in, they don't really have stoppers defensively. It's different. You could be as locked in as you want, have every defensive coverage in the world. You could watch you could watch any of the top defensive teams and try to emulate what they do. They just don't have it. They're going to need to make that trade. If they can do that CJ for Ben, it's not a perfect trade, but Ben at least brings a different type of player, a player that could stop people, a player that could play defense. You've got enough offense with Lillard and Powell. You got decent shooting. Covington's could shoot it just a little bit. You got Tony Snell coming off the bench, but they're gonna need to make a move, or this. I just don't see this team really doing much. You got a rookie coach. It's not like you're a rookie coach taking over. It's not a Steve Kerr rookie coach. It's not a Steve Nash rookie coach deal where you have all these horses that you could just roll into playoffs, and then you just got to figure it out on the fly. But you have enough talent to really, to not really worry about a lot of the development in your coaching. You could sort of learn as you go, and you'll have success regardless. This is a team that you have to grind out. Terry Stoss is one of the better coaches in the league, and they struggle to get by. I don't see this really being much different. I probably see them as a 9 or a 10 seed. I don't see them getting into the top 8 after I don't think they'll get out of the play-in. And they're going to have to make a trade. I think I could see some major changes coming this way in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I agree, and watch that space, because you can only beat a dead horse so much, and that roster's been kind of the same nucleus for a number of years. It just hasn't got it done. Unfortunately, a lot of that was against the Golden State Warriors, which is just an unfortunate reality what they had to deal with when they were at their strongest. They ran into us a few times and we bounced them out, and they were a pretty good team then. So who knows what would have been if the Warriors went in their way. The next team, Minnesota, I've got them bounced. Towns. The question I have is Towns going to have to eventually give up the keys to Edwards? It's looking that way. Edwards is looking like he's going to be the guy there. It's just a matter of when, and you factor in that he's a perimeter player. We know how that struggle usually goes when it's perimeter versus big. It usually slides with a perimeter because you're getting the ball more and you're accessible to the ball more on the perimeter. But yeah, I think that one gripe that you hate about whose team is it could play its part here. Edwards definitely not a shy guy, likes to speak out, he's confident. But Towns obviously knows, this is my team right now, blah, blah, blah. So that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. They got some more toughness with Beverly, a few little tweaks to their roster, but I just don't think they have enough yet. Towns hasn't proven to me that he's a winner. Edwards has some fire to him, might win him some games, but I think they're at the end of all this, they'll be playoff bounce, pro. Yeah, I like them. I think they're making some headway. I do. I think they have a lot of talent, young talent, and unproven. They've got Carl, Towns. I'm not a huge Russell fan, but he does put up numbers, and he is an extra guy you have to worry about on the court if you're facing them. I think Anthony Edwards is a star in that team. I think he's going to be an all-star, at some point of his career, and he's got a lot of talent. Just like you said with the whole my team thing, I think if they stop fighting that and not even worry about it and just go out and play. Right now, you could rely on Towns probably more. You can rely on Edwards probably right now. Edwards will probably show you flashes of brilliance and then sort of have those nights where he's going to be in the tank. I mean, it's his second year. But I think that they have a lot of good talent, with those 3 guys. Plus, you have like a Koji, and you've got Malik Beasley, and you got Taurean Prince. Vanderbilt and Naz Reid have done well in their development program. I could see them sneaking into a 10. I could maybe see them, maybe getting Portland out of that 10 spot. So it's a tough one for me. I'd probably say out, just because they may not have enough, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were in. But I will say they're bounced. But I do like what they're doing. I do like their young talent. I don't know if they're going to make any moves and get Russell or Towns out of town. But, I mean, if you just keep this core together, add a couple more pieces, they've proven that they could develop some young guys that, you didn't expect much out of. So I could see these guys making a little bit of a push for 10, but probably going to get beat out late in the year. But, I sort of like, at least they get some life. They haven't had life in this organization for a while. Yeah, and they probably just need some stability too. So I like your point about trying to keep the group together for more than a season, because they just don't seem to keep rosters together. They're always making some tweaks and splashes and this and that, Jimmy Butler deal, all that kind of stuff. So maybe they keep it together for a year or two, and then the nucleus forms naturally. Next one, OKC, obviously bounced. This is
Josh Giddey and Gilgeous Alexander development season again. I think SGA has a chance to be an all-star. I think he might just miss out on that because they're going to suck. They're not going to win many games. Josh Giddey will obviously get thrown to the fire and play a huge amount of minutes, which is great for him individually. I don't think they'll win more than 20, maybe 25 games pro if they're lucky. I think they'll be in the 20s. They have a lot of assets. They have a lot of picks. OKC, we know they love to stockpile draft picks, and they do a lot of things and, think outside the grain. They make a lot of chess moves long term. So my question would be is, knowing they're going to be bad this season, do they just run the course bad, develop, or do they make a move hedging towards the off season where they can bring in a star because they've got the the assets to do so, or are they just going to go straight, build with this young core and draft right and build that way? What do you think?
I think they're bounced to obviously, and to answer your question, I think that they're not thinking of like that yet. I don't think they're thinking about acquiring a star. Even if they could, they're really not in a position to sustain it, to sustain anything right now. They've got all these young guys they're trying to really figure out. They gotta develop Giddey. They gotta develop, Pokusevsky. I'll call him AP, the foreman. That's very inconsistent for them. Obviously, you got SGA doing his thing and trying to develop, and I think he'll be a borderline all-star player. So for them, I think they're just trying to, I think they'd want to, in the next 2 years, probably try to get as high a pick as they can. I don't think that those teams are going to bottom out the other guys that they've got pick swaps and things with. Maybe Houston. I'm not sure their situation with their pick. And the Clippers, obviously, they own a lot of those picks. So finish bad. Play these guys hard. They're going to get beat. Try to get in the top 3 pick wise. See what happens with those Clipper and Houston Rockets picks that you have, and then just probably for the next couple of years. Again, even if you got a superstar and used your picks, why would you do it? You got low salary. SGA makes a lot, but most of the other guys in the roster really don't make much money. So they could just sort of milk this as much as they can and then try to get as many assets drafted in the next couple of years. And then you add on your salary. Then you'll have to extend a couple of these rookies and move forward, similar to what they did when they were drafted in 07 and 07, 08, and trying to develop their team with Westbrook and Durant and those guys and Jeff Green. I think that they're going to take their time. They're not going to move the needle salary wise, and then they'll make a big splash probably in the next couple of years as far as acquiring free agents and trades and things like that, as well as the young players that they develop. So yeah, they're going to be probably bottom 3 team wise, record wise, in my opinion, and they're going to try to challenge for that number 1 pick.
Yeah, I agree. I think they'll stay put the next season. It's just going to be an ugly one for them. They're not going to win much games, and they will continue to retool young. The Golden State Warriors, obviously playoff bound. I think they've retooled pretty well. Poole has been a dramatic improver, which a lot of people didn't see to this extent. With the loss of Clay, I think his improvement is going to be massive for them. I think they're capable of going deep. I think they really have a top 4 chance for this roster, staying healthy, even without Clay. And then Clay obviously getting healthier post the new year. The Bielitsa acquisition, I think, was great. It brings a 5-man that can handle the ball, but can also shoot the 3. So you put him next to Draymond. The floor's not as congested if you've got a natural 5 that can't shoot 3s next to Draymond. So I think that's a no-brainer. The Iguodala acquisition, I think, is good. Just knows the guys, fits in so well, not going to cause any problems. A lot comes down to the Wiseman development, seeing where his injury is first and foremost, and then just the development of where and how they play him in that system will be interesting because they like to go Draymond Green at the 5. Bielitz has obviously played himself into some minutes now at the 5 with the way he shoots the 3 ball and passes the ball. They have a lot of different lineups they can go to, and I think that's when they're the most dangerous, when they can go kind of bigger, they can go smaller, they can go a shooting lineup. So I like the versatility of their roster. You factor all that in with Clay being healthy post New Year. I think they're a top 4 team, bro. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're going to compete for the 4 and 5. I think that them and Dallas, even though Dallas, obviously early on haven't played well, they haven't played great, in the last game and what have you. But I think that they're going to battle Dallas for 4 or 5. and you'll probably see that match up at the 4-5 spot in the playoffs. I like what they have, obviously, with Steph and Clay coming back and Draymond. And, Wiggins can give you 16 to 19 a night, even though he's not the most consistent player. Otto Porter, I like. Jordan Poole's gotten better. I think Moses Moody, second half of the season, you're probably going to see a little bit of consistency in him. He's obviously just a rookie. I don't know what Kuminga is going to do yet, but Wiseman, I think he'll make a splash if he could play some minutes and develop and stay healthy. And obviously, Will Bielitsa doing well. I like this team. Obviously, they just, they still got to get used to each other with Poole playing bigger minutes, and and Wiseman's got to get healthy. What's going on with Wiseman anyway? I forgot.
Wasn't it something with his knee or quad or something like that? I'm not 100% positive, to be honest with you. I thought it was something with his leg.
I think so. I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how long it's going to be out for. But hey, look, you got Steph. You got that whole deal going, and when Clay comes back, it's probably going to be a little rusty when it comes back. So you probably won't see them until mid-February, really, or early March, really start to click, in my opinion, just to get him going and get his legs under him. And I like I said, I think they'll challenge 4-5, and they could probably make a little bit of a splash in the playoffs, at least maybe win a round. I think that Dallas Golden State series will be very interesting if they do match up. So we'll see, but I definitely think they're playoff bound, and I think some of the younger players like Poole's going to have his ups and downs, and Moody's probably going to be inconsistent for a little bit. I don't know if Kuminga would crack the rotation as of yet, but who knows? And then you got guys like Iguodala and Porter Jr. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, I think that it'll be an interesting year for them, and I think they have a chance to, like I said, have home court in the playoffs, or at least be that 4-5.
Wiseman tore meniscus in April, had surgery to repair it. He's rumored to be back on the training floor this week, this Friday, at full speed. So you'd assume probably 2 weeks to a month of full training before he's actually playing a game. So they'll probably see him, hopefully before Christmas sometime, they say. So that'll be interesting to see where he fits in with all that, whether they ease him back slowly. But I think, I have some bias because obviously I know the guys there, but I think they're going to have a very good year in Golden State. I think there seems to be a bit of calm around Draymond and the group, and it just seems like they're kind of accelerating towards having a good season. So watch that space. The LA Clippers, playoff bound. Obviously, Kawhi is the elephant in the room health wise now. He's due. He's a year in. What is it? April? He did an April, May, didn't he? Playoffs. So
yeah.
Yeah, he'd be, but it wasn't. They said it wasn't a full tear, so who knows? These things, ACLs can sometimes take longer when they're not a full tear than they can when they're a full tear, believe it or not. But who knows if he'll be back? That's a big question mark. I mean, Reggie Jackson is probably their genuine number 2 threat right now, scoring wise. I think he had a great playoffs for him. But he's going to be their number 2 guy after Paul George, in my opinion. They do have Bledsoe in the lineup. They're better defensively, but I think they're worse offensively. I just don't think they have enough shooting around Paul George right now. With Bledsoe in the lineup for big minutes. Does Mann continue his development? He had a great playoffs. He hasn't started the season fantastically, but he's surging upwards, albeit slowly. He needs to have a really good year for them to continue to be better. But they all come down to health, in my opinion. If they're a healthy team, they'll have a chance to be in the mix somewhere in the middle of the playoffs. They're bound. But if Kawhi can somehow perform a miracle with his knee and get back towards the end of the season, they have a chance to make a bit more noise in the playoffs. But yeah, I see them as a playoff bound team, probably second round, roughly around there again, and out pro. Yeah,
it'll be interesting. Obviously, see what happens with Kawhi. I like this team because they've been together a little bit, through last year. Bledsoe's obviously new, but I like their toughness. With I like that Jackson Bledsoe lineup. Bledsoe doesn't really provide you shooting, but he could defend. He's good in transition. He can straight line drive you. I like Marcus Morris. I don't know. They may, it'll be interesting how their offense works, but I like them. They're solid. I love Zubac. Then you got Terrence Mann and Batum. I don't know what's going on with Ibaka. I don't know if it's still his back from last year or whatever. And then, guys like Kennard and, Kennard could help you. Winslow could help you a little bit. Obviously they got no chance, trying to get into multiple rounds if they don't have Kawhi in. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but I don't know if you want to be rushing him back if he's going to be there at the later of the year. You might as well just, call it a year. Everybody's safe. In the NBA, it's all about keeping your job and keeping that check coming every 2 weeks. I mean, obviously you got to get a pass from general manager to coach as far as not having Kawhi and going deep in the playoffs. I don't expect them to win a round because I don't think they're going to get home court advantage in that first round. So I think they're probably 1-out. If Kawhi does come back, you're probably looking at a late year comeback. So, who knows? Now, again, I'm not a fucking doctor, so I'm not going to try to guess. But I don't think this team's good enough. They're good. They'll probably be 5, 6, 7. I don't think they'll be playing. I think they'll be a little bit above that. They'll probably be 5 or 6, but I don't see them advancing without Kawhi in there and, Kawhi for an extended period of time, trying to play. So, they're a good team, but without Kawhi, I think it'll be a problem.
Yeah, one of the best players in the NBA. You lose him, any team's going to struggle. The LA Lakers, their neighbors, playoff bound. I think they're going to be a junky playoff bound team, bro. I don't think they're going to be as good as people think. Obviously, we've got the body of work we've seen the last 2 games with all the issues already, but the roster just doesn't seem to fit well for me. You bring in Russell Westbrook, who's a guy that's had an all-time high usage on most teams that he's been on the last, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Then you've got LeBron, who wants the ball in his hands to play make. Then you've got Anthony Davis. It just does not seem to fit for me. I mean, they have a lot of veterans that you can say, well, they need to buy in. They need to play their role for the betterment of the team. But, I mean, Westbrook's most useful is with the ball in his hands, getting triple-doubles up and down the court. I don't think you're going to see that with LeBron also wanting to be a similar impact player, right? So that's interesting. I mean, their age, I think what hurts them about the age is I don't think they have enough of that youthful energy that will play hard every night. We're talking about the Clippers. They got a couple of young guys that will still come in and battle no matter what, or whoever it is, even the Golden State Warriors with the Poole and a few other guys. They got guys that will come in and battle for their minutes, right? The Lakers kind of have a bunch of veterans that are established. They know their role and they're just going to play their role, and they're not going to give you much above their role, in my opinion. So I think some of that youthfulness is going to be a hindrance to them. I think they could have really valued 2 or 3 of those young, energetic, chirpy guys on the court. I don't know how you see it, but look, I think they'll still be there somewhere, second round, I think, but it just doesn't look like a roster that fits well unless they make some changes, going into the trade deadline, pro.
Yeah, I don't think they really have many assets to move to really make those changes, to be honest with Bogues. I think what they really need to do offensively, obviously, it's a little clunky. It's only 2 games in. I'm not really worried about, their first 2, although some of the things, there are some red flags. Like defensively is the biggest thing. Like LeBron and AD have to step up more defensively. Like, LeBron's getting cut on. There's a lot of mental mistakes. Look, he's one of the smartest players ever to play the game. So, it's probably just more of a early season thing and not really picking it up until later in the year. AD's got to play harder defensively. He's got to be more in tune defensively. It seemed like, not that he's given up defensively and not playing, but it's mostly just he's not, he showed some flashes last night early in the Phoenix game about, stepping up on pick and rolls, trying to really be a rim protector, not just, but then there's a lot of mental lapses and just, again, it's early season, so maybe they're just on, they're on the honeymoon sort of deal, but they got to really step up defensively. They don't have those great defenders on ball, but off ball stuff, they really got to start being in tune what they're doing on pick and roll coverages and off the ball and, getting lobbed on and dunked on and straight line drive and cut, so defensively, they really got to lock in and say, you know what, we are a good team. We got a lot of talent. We got talent, obviously, in our top 3, but we got to really buckle down defensively and really be on the same page. And that whole fight on a scuffle on the sideline, whatever you want to call it. I mean, obviously, people are going to overplay that. That stuff happens. Problem is, it usually happens in practice, or it happens when the cameras don't see it. So, I'm not really worried about that. But
yeah, I don't see it. I don't see that as a big deal at all. I mean, it is what it is. But what I see a big deal is you have Westbrook out there who's not a 3-point shooter. They always have either DeAndre or Dwight in there who's not a 3-point shooter. LeBron likes to have spacing. Well, you've lost a lot of spacing right there, so I just don't know how they can play some of those guys together. I think they just need more shooting out there, and Westbrook's not a 3-point shooter. So every given possession, you've got DeAndre or Dwight's guy sitting in the paint, and then you've got Westbrook's essentially clogging the paint. I don't know how much longer LeBron is okay with that. till they have to, can they make changes? I mean, they can't bench Westbrook. They might need to go smaller in the other aspect and start a shooting 5-man, but it's just a clunky fit, bro. I just don't see that they have enough shooting to.
Yeah, DeAndre's probably going to be the guy, in my opinion, probably to take a back seat. Dwight, they probably like coming off the bench to rebound and things and play AD at more of a shooting 5.
He hates the 5. AD hates the 5 because he doesn't like wrestling because he gets hurt. So it's noted. People
no
know.
doubt.
Yeah, so they're in some. That's what I mean. That's why they signed DeAndre and Dwight. People question why you didn't need two of the same kind of players is because AD does not like playing the 5. It's well noted. So I think for them to succeed, he needs to be the 5. You can put Melo at the 4, and then you can play Russ with LeBron and maybe another 3-point shooter. But it's just interesting to watch from afar.
Yeah, and then the ISO and offensively, there's ISO. Why don't they take a page out of Golden State's book? Run split action, cutting, moving. I know they're older. Don't get me wrong. No doubt about it. But you got to have some movement. You just can't throw it in AD on the left block and let him operate. You can't have LeBron just back you down from the 3-point line and shoot fadeaways all day. You're not going to win that way. You're not going to win big playoff games that way. They're not that good to do that. Their team's just not that good to do it. They got to move the ball. They got to put 2 on the ball constantly, and they got to kick, and they got to swing and get open shots. They're not a good shooting team, like you said. They're going to be, teams could just, don't have to close out all the way to you just because they don't have that shooting. So LeBron's going to be facing, contested shots, most of his shots, and same thing with AD. They're not helping off of some of these guys, and even if they do, you're not going to be able to punish them for open shooters. So, and then if you take a Bazemore out of the lineup or you take an Ellington out of the lineup, that's, like Ellington, that's another shooter. Bazemore's never really been a great shooter. I mean, he's been inconsistent. Tucker Horton's not a shooter. Kendrick Nunn doesn't really have a high basketball IQ, but he can shoot a little bit. Yeah, and then they got Avery Bradley who could guard, but he's not really a shooter. So, yeah, and then you got Ariza, who knows?
The young kid, what's his name? Is it Reeves? Reeves? Is that his name?
Reeves, the white kid.
Yeah,
what do they call him?
He's probably their hardest playing guy. He's diving on loose balls in preseason, so he might fit that Delhi type role that LeBron always has. One of those guys, Delhi, Caruso, one of those hustle guys that'll just want to. He might find some minutes with all this, but it seemed like your dog agreed with your Lakers take as well in the background there, pro.
Yeah,
that was your dog this time, right? Wasn't your kid again?
Yeah, that was the dog. That wasn't the kid. I didn't put the kid in the kennel. I need to put that dog. I need to put that dog in the fucking trading block. I'll tell you that. Get that fucking dog out of my house. I apologize for it.
No. I think he was just disappointed with the Lakers take. But moving on, Phoenix Suns, playoff bound, obviously, runners up last season. They'll be in the mix for the top 4. In my opinion, obviously, that's pretty obvious. But I don't know if they repeat last season's run. They've upgraded a little bit. They got Shamet and McGee. It's just going to be a lot of CP3 and Devin Booker again for them to have a chance. And you're relying on an ever aging CP3, which is playing very, very well. Don't get me wrong, hell of a player, and Booker obviously. But I don't know. I don't. If I have to call it right now, I don't think they're a finals team this season. I think they maybe go conference finals. Would be their deepest, but they're still solid. They're fun to watch. They're very, very team orientated. They play well together, but I just don't think they improved much on their roster to take that next step to get a championship, pro.
Bogues, if Golden State had all their guys from day one, if Kawhi was playing, if the Lakers weren't a complete shit show, I would say, yeah, for sure they won't be a finals team. I just think there are too many good teams. But I just don't see that team in the West right now that you're going to say, oh, 1,000% they're in. Especially you might say one. You could name one. If Utah's your team, if Denver's your team, what have you. But there's not really two teams that you could say definite. They do play really well together. You don't know what's going to happen injury-wise. They've been together. They got a good coach. They've obviously had some success together. So I could see them getting into the finals. I don't think they have enough if Brooklyn's full speed or Milwaukee's full speed. With their team as far as injury is concerned. But I do like the way they play. They play together. They move the ball. They haven't played great so far, obviously, but it's so early in the year that they can get better. But I think they'll be in the top 4. I don't know what they're going to do, obviously, but I could see him in the top 4 competing for that conference finals at least, and we'll call it that and see what happens. But hey, look, you got Paul and Booker and Bridges is playing well, and Crowder's got a little bit more confidence, from last year, and you got Campaign talking shit to everybody that from fucking LeBron James to the guy that sells the nachos.
Yeah.
So he's pretty fun to watch. It'll be interesting. That bench is good. We'll see if it can hold up. We'll see if Nader and some of these other guys, Shamit, Saric and things like that. So it'll be an interesting season for these guys. I could see them getting back to the finals. I don't think they can win it, but I could definitely see them getting to the finals.
Yeah, I think they'll be solid. I'm just going to go against the grain and say they're not going to make the finals. They'll make the conference finals at best. All right, next one, Sacramento Kings. Now, I have them bounced. I think they could sneak a playing game maybe, but to me, they're the Sacramento Kings of the last 10, 15 years. They're just in the middle of the park. Don't know whether they're going to be a playoff team or a lottery team. They're kind of having that battle. They've got some youth and talent. They have some drama already with Bagley wanting out, his agent causing some issues. Harrison Barnes started the season well. That's been a notable improvement by Harrison's standards. He's played very, very well these last couple of games. But yeah, I think they're middle of the park. I just don't see them making any noise. So they're one of the teams that could be fringe in, but I've got them as fringe out. But they just haven't sold me enough on what they're trying to build there in Sacramento, Pro.
Yeah, I'm not. I think they can make a run for 10. I don't know if they're going to get there. They're just not good enough. They don't have that experience yet. They got some talented guys. Harrison's putting up 30 and 12, and he's on both of my fantasy teams. So God bless you, brother. Keep that fucking pace up. But I just don't see it. I see them probably faltering at the end of the year, and probably falling at it a little bit. The whole Bagley thing's so fucking overblown. It's not even funny. The thing is now that everybody's going to take the Ben Simmons route, right? Everyone's going to, complain in the media. They're going to try to start a shitstorm. Marvin Bagley's a good player. He's a solid player. He's as good as like a Morris twin, which is a good player. He could start on some teams, rotation player on most teams, but he's just, he doesn't do anything great. He's like 14-7. And, you're yelling like this guy's fucking Karl Malone and you're not starting Karl Malone. He's okay. He's a good player, but, it is what it is. He's been inconsistent. He's been hurt. He's like a 14-6 guy, 14-7 guy, but he's just not one of those guys, I like Fox. Fox is really good. Sometimes he teases you because he looks really good one night. Obviously he's a young kid. But I just don't see it. Like Halliburton, everybody's crazy about. I think he's a good player. I don't think he does anything great. Harrison Barnes is solid. He's always going to be that guy who can give you 20 and 7. Obviously he's a pro's pro. And then Rashawn Holmes is Rashawn Holmes can give you like 10 and 12 and 10 or whatever. He's active big. And then you got Buddy Hield coming off the bench. They just don't have enough. They don't have that. They don't really have a real like true number one, proven number one yet. They've got a bunch of guys that are good, but they don't have that proven superstar. They've got good players, but they haven't had any body of work to tell you, yeah, they're definitely going to be a playoff team. They'll make a push for 10. Maybe they'll get in, maybe they won't. I don't see anything that will tell me otherwise that I could totally trust these guys for 82 games.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think they'll potentially have an 8-game win streak and then have an 8-game losing streak. Like they got that kind of team that can just be so hot and cold, and that's what we've seen the last 10 odd years in Sacramento. So I think that'll continue the same, unfortunately, for Sacramento fans. All right, Dallas. They're playoff bound, obviously. I think it's all on Luka, as we know, and I think it's even more all on Luka. I think they're watching their last couple of games. It is early in the season. They got a new head coach. It's still kind of their offense. Still, we don't know what they are. A lot of ISO. They kind of sleepwalk through a lot of things early, and then it all falls on Luka getting them buckets. And they came back in today's game. They were down pretty big against Toronto. They came back and won off Luka's bat basically, and Tim Hardaway Jr. hit some big shots. But for me, Kristaps Porzingis he still coasts a fair bit. I think he's getting more touches now. He's getting those 18-foot post-ups. I think Jason Kidd had that little powwow in Latvia with him, and they hugged it out and figured out that we'll get you some more touches on the block and keep you happy. But he just seems like he coasts a fair bit, and he was a very, very talented defensive player in New York. Just his length and athleticism caused a lot of problems. We've seen spurts of it in Dallas, but it just seems like it's all determined on touches offensively. If he's feeling himself offensively, he's getting touches, he's making shots. He's a a really good defender and he's engaged. When he's not getting those touches and not involved offensively, it seems like he doesn't give a shit defensively. That's kind of the take that I've noticed watching him in Dallas the last couple of seasons. Pressure's on Jay Kidd a little bit, in my opinion. Most people think this is probably a second round at minimum team on the roster they've got now. Luka's got another year. Kristaps is off the reservation and brought in a little bit more because Carlisle's gone. I made a few little tweaks. I think Reggie Bullock's a good 3-and-D guy for him. I like his game. I think he fits in perfectly for what Luka Doncic and that team is, because he doesn't need the ball. He's a knockdown 3-point shooter and he'll guard their best player if he needs be, so he fits in well next to Hardaway Jr. But yeah, I think the pressure's starting to build a little bit on Dallas. I think they need to get to that second round at minimum. Will they? They haven't been out of the first round in a number of years, as we know, under Rick Carlisle. So it'll be interesting to see what your thoughts are as deep as they go and what we need to watch out for, bro.
Yeah, it's funny how people react to this stuff. Like, you read the media after the first game, they want to fire Jay Kidd. It's funny. Jay Kidd's the savior before the tip of the game one, right? Jay Kidd's the savior. Kristaps is, he's back to old Kristaps, dominating all this stuff. I never use the word unicorn. I hate that fucking term, so I'll never say it in a regular sentence. But they were saying, oh, he's great. Now after the first game, oh, same old Kristaps, fire Jay Kidd. He's a joke. I mean, it's just funny, like how people overreact to that. I think Porzingis is going to be fine. I think he probably still doesn't trust it, because of what happened there in the last couple of years with him. In his sort of how they used him, and how the NBA is. Everybody, like in the beginning of the year, it's going to be different. It's going to be different, and then it ends up being the same. So I think he's probably just waiting this out a little bit just to make sure that he's still going to be an intricate part of the team. Look, that first game with Atlanta, they got blown out, but look, they were on the road. I'm not making excuses, but they were on the road. Atlanta played very well. Collins killed them. Trae Young didn't really have a great game, but then he heated up. Capella killed him on the boards. They were just lob after lob after lob, and it just was a tough night for him. They didn't make shots. Everybody was killing them for taking mid-range shots. I don't give a fuck. They took decent shots. They had good looks. They got chased off the line. They just couldn't make shots. Dorian Finney-Smith didn't shoot it well. Hardaway got fucked up a little bit in the game, got stitches or whatever, and he didn't have a great game. Kristaps didn't ever. No one really had a great game for Dallas. I think the best player on the floor was Jalen Brunson. But you're not going to have that every night. I think Porzingis will be fine. I think you got to continue to post him. You got to continue to play him out of the high post, let him face up and be a threat, let him pick and pop. He's not a great shooter. Everybody continues to wait for him to be Dirk Nowitzki. He's been an inconsistent shooter his whole career. He's shown, He's shown flashes of being a decent shooter, but he's not really this Dirk Nowitzki type player. He's his own type. He can drive it. He's got some energy coming, putting the ball on the floor and getting to the rim. He could, pick and roll. He could run to the rim in transition. He could do some different things. Not a good passer. He's a good defensive player. I agree with you. I think, and you know how this is in the NBA, like, you morph sometimes into thinking that your offense should dictate your defense, where they're two totally different things. Look, you got to make a difference on the defensive side with your length and your ability to protect the rim and do some things. And then offensively, you got to try to be the best you can. Some nights your defense is going to suck and your offense is going to get you through the night, and then vice versa. When your shot's not falling, you got to find other ways to do things. I think that's the problem with Porzingis the last couple of years of how he used in Dallas. Like, they just put him at the 3-point line. They stopped posting him up. And if he wasn't hitting threes, he couldn't do anything else. Now, if you put him at the high post, you could roll him to the rim. You could face him up and drive him. You could, face up and shoot. He can do some different things. He's not Dirk Nowitzki where you could just throw it down to him on the block and he could back you in and make a play. He needs to face you up. He needs to be on the move. And then obviously the health thing. I think they're a good team, Bogues, because they've been together. Their core of their team has been together for a long time. Guys like, Hardaway, Finney-Smith, Dwight Powell, Brunson, Kleber. Those guys have all been together for a while. They don't really need the ball in their hand. Besides, Hardaway needs the ball a little bit. But all these guys that are like unselfish guys, they know how to play together. They know that Doncic and Porzingis are the show, and that those guys are trying to fill in spots. I think they can win around, even though they were bad the first night. They played better. They won on the road tonight in Toronto. They'll be okay. I think they'll be like they're battling for that 4-5 seed. I think they can win around because I believe in Doncic, obviously, and I believe in their secondary players the most. And, we'll see what happens. But, Yeah, I think there's a little pressure on J. Kidd because obviously, he's replacing Carlisle, and there's a lot of, there's been a lot of pressure on him to win. I don't know. We'll see. I think he'll be okay. I don't know the guy, but I think he's got enough talent to win. It's not like he needs to grind out games coaching. This team's got some talent. They just got to make shots. With Bullock and Kleber, Bullock, Finney-Smith, those guys got to bail these guys out. The one thing I will notice under Kidd is you notice that guys aren't really, they're not like robots out there. They're not shooting. Like, they're not afraid to shoot. Like, Powell's not afraid to shoot threes. Dorian Finney-Smith's not afraid to shoot threes. Kleber's not afraid. Like, they play a little bit more free offensively, I think, under Kidd, for one reason or another. And maybe it's just experience. Maybe it's another year. But it just seems like these guys are a little bit free. I think they're going to play well in spurts this year, and I think they'll challenge for the second round.
Yeah, that's about where I've got them, so we'll see. Memphis, trending upward. I think they're playoff bound, whether it's a play-in or playoffs. I think they'll be in the top 10. Yeah, they're definitely getting better. Morant, he's continuing to grow. Just the athleticism and the way he plays a game, I think he's just naturally going to get better and better. The Steven Adams thing, I mean, does he fit? Who knows where that all lies? I mean, there are some bigs in the West where he'll need to play minutes, but I'm still not sure about that fit completely. Dylan Brooks, does he continue his good playoff run into this season? I think that's the other one that a lot of people didn't expect him to have the playoffs that he had. He played very, very well against the Utah Jazz, even though they got bounced in that first round. They actually pushed the Utah Jazz in a few of those games too, which was fun to watch as essentially one of the last seeds from the play-in. But they did really well, and I'm excited to see how they grow because I think they'll be a pretty competitive team. Jackson's a good player as well, so they have a decent roster to make some noise. I think they'll be playoff bound. They'll be towards the bottom. The bottom half of the West, but they'll be in there somewhere, bro.
I like the way they are. I like their team. I do like the Adams pickup. You sort of trade in, like rearranging the deck chairs of the Titanic with him and Valanciunas. Like, you could have one or the other, but they're both going to rebound. They're both really not great scorers, but they're going to rebound. They're going to be tough. They're going to protect John Morant. Sort of that, Bill Lambert type player that's going to protect your guy. They got shooters. I like Brooks. I like Bain. They're solid players. I'll be interested to see. Like, John Morant's a superstar. He's going to be, a player that could be a perennial All-Star Hall of Fame type player if he stays healthy. I think he could be really good. And the question is, like, how good is Jaren Jackson? We really didn't see him last year because he was hurt. That's going to be a big part of if they could sort of make a challenge in the playoffs to get out of the first round. Maybe they are a player. They're probably going to be a play-in team with 9 or 10, and then 8, 9, or 10. And see if they could get into the top 8. I like the group. I think they're young. I think they fight. Their bench is okay. I like Kyle Anderson. I like Tyus Jones. Xavier Tillman's played decent at times. But they're going to probably go as far as Jaren Jackson's going to take them because they need that second guy. I mean, Brooks could score. He could shoot. He's not like an ISO type guy. I don't know the type of player Jackson is yet. He had a good rookie year. So, obviously, I just haven't really seen him do much more, obviously because of the injuries and things. So it'll be interesting to see where they go. They're an exciting team. I like watching them. They're good in pick and roll. They got good role players. They got decent shooting. It'll be interesting. I think they're playoff bound. I can't really see them getting out of a round, possibly getting into the top 8, but probably besides that, I can't see them going past that.
Yeah, I'd agree. They'll be in there somewhere, but they're not going to dominate, but I think they'll continue to grow and get better. The New Orleans Pelicans, I've got them bounced. I think the Zion health issue, we actually broke early that he was heavily overweight. That's made the news over the last week. We spoke about that weeks ago. I got a friendly tip that he was over 300 pounds, and someone said way over to me. He's potentially way over 300 pounds. So that's a huge issue for them. He's their franchise guy, and they're somewhat stuck whether they build around him or does he walk away in a couple of years, whether he signs that Supermax and just leaves. I just don't like their roster. I think their roster's a strange one. It doesn't fit that well. New coach, I think they're half rebuild with Zion 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the door. I will say this, if Ingram continues to grow and becomes an all-star, they have a chance to make the playoffs. So if he becomes one of those all-star players, they might have a chance to scrape in for one of those playing spots. But as of today, I have them playoff bounds. I just don't think they have enough on that roster that's
fits in well with each other, and they got a new head coach and all that kind of stuff. And the Zion thing, like I said, I mean, it's going to become a distraction eventually, and obviously carrying that kind of weight, coming back from an injury, even if he does come back healthy, there's every chance in the world he gets hurt again by carrying 20, 30 extra pounds. With how explosive he is already, he's probably not the smartest thing to do, bro.
They're definitely going to be bounced, in my opinion. I don't see any upside with this team at all. Zion, for as much of a talent as he is, like, how much does he really love basketball? Being a professional so far. Now, he's so early in his career. Obviously, he's going to, he should be better. And at some point, something's going to click and say, you know what, I can't allow myself to be 300 pounds. Like, he doesn't want to be there. That's obvious, that whole shit show, what's going on there. And then he doesn't want to be there. He hasn't want to be there since his rookie year. He hasn't liked it. That's been obvious. And, his weight fluctuation, his injury issues. He's not really a skilled basketball player, although he's the most productive non-skilled player that I've ever seen. He doesn't shoot it. He handles it okay. He's not really a passer, but I don't think you should really try to build around him. Now, he'd be look, they've got all the cards right now, in the short term. No player has ever said no to a max extension out of a rookie deal. Now, players have forced their way out of town before their extension came up, like Porzingis. So, he's one of the only guys rookie-wise that was sort of at that level where he's going to get a max contract that didn't sign a max extension with their team, the original draft team. So he can do that. He can try to force his way out. The problem is he's still under his rookie scale contract. So if you're trying to get major assets coming back, it's going to be really tough to do that, without him having really a heavy salary, because then you have to put multiple players out the door, and then you got to have salaries match up and things like that, and depending on what you're trying to bring back. I think it's just a tough situation. They don't have a lot of talent on the team. I like Ingram. I think Ingram's, I don't really have the list in front of me, but I got to see he's at least a borderline all-star player, top 35 player in the league. He's a very good player. Valanciunas is a very good enforcer, rebounder, good pro, tough guy. Devontae Graham's just okay. Alexander Walker, just okay. They don't really have anything that they could really, say, yeah, these guys are real, these guys are it for us. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't see this ending well. I think he'll either sign his extension and get out of there, in year after year one.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen. 100%. He's not turning that money down.
Yeah.
We've seen this story before. He's going to say he wants to be in New Orleans, happy to sign this deal, and within a year, he's going to be looking to go somewhere else.
But he's got to step the fuck up too, this kid. Look, he's a young kid. I get it, but look, it's gonna start being year 7 for him, year 8 for him, year 9 for him. When's he gonna have a healthy year? When's he gonna actually be in shape all year? When's he gonna work on his shot to actually get that thing better? Look, as much as we want, I wanted to be like critical on Giannis as his shot. Everything else was fine. He didn't shoot it well, but the guy's in great shape. He works his ass off, charismatic. He works, he plays great defense. He makes impact on both ends of the floor. And he couldn't really shoot. Now his shooting seems like it's stabilizing. This kid needs to really, when are you going to hang your hat on? Okay, all right, so if you're not a shooter and you're not really a ball handler, they want to compare him to LeBron James. I have no idea how the fuck you'd ever want to compare him to LeBron James. More like Jerome James with the weight, but not like LeBron James. He's got to hang his hat on something. If you're not going to be a shooter and you're not going to be a skilled player, then be in fucking shape. Come in shape. Forget about your hatred towards the organization. Be a pro. Kobe, he told me, look, when I wanted to be traded, right? And I definitely wanted, there was a time in my career I wanted out of LA. That's when that Chicago Bulls trade almost happened. It was within days of happening. But he goes, Mike, what I did? My hatred towards that situation at the time, I came in, I got my work in. I didn't let anything bother me. I got my work in. I had my routine in. Never I was a pro to everybody. I was a little grumpy, but I was a pro to everybody. And then if they traded me, they traded me. But I wasn't going to give anybody a reason to say, you know what, Kobe ain't bringing it every day. And that's what that guy needs to do, because he hasn't done anything yet. He hasn't shown that he could bring his team into the playoffs and win. He hasn't shown that he can be consistently healthy. He hasn't shown that he can be consistently in shape. He hasn't shot the ball. But yeah, he averages 20 plus, and he's a beast without question. But he's got to, at some point, you know what? Stop the excuses. The people around you, if it's family or agent or friends or whatever, like don't listen anymore. Start getting in shape. Start taking this shit serious. And then look, if you've done everything, then you could say, you know what? I've done everything. What the fuck have you guys done on the organizational side? Because like the organization hasn't done you many favors and you haven't done yourself many favors. So one has got to fucking grow the fuck up and be a pro out of this thing and start doing your fucking job. I'm just tired of reading about it.
Yeah, it goes both ways. And that's what we see. Yeah, there needs to be a mix of both ways, and the weight things are controllable. So you got to come in. One thing you do as an athlete is you try to come into training camp in shape, and that tells you if you're committed or not. And when guys come overweight, it's not a good look.
And Zion and I are fellow fat guys, so he doesn't like when you call him fat, but because you're in shape. But he doesn't mind if I call him fat because I'm one of his people.
You're allowed to use the word because you're in the group, right?
Exactly, the F word.
Yeah. San Antonio Spurs. Now, this one for some people might be controversial. I'm going playoff bound, bro. I'm going playoff bound. Let me tell you why. I think they get a play-in game. I think the machine that is the Spurs will sneak in to a playoff play-in game. I think they're going to find ways to win games at home. And I think they have a young and energetic roster, which is something Pop hasn't had for a long, long time. Young, energetic. He can go to multiple lineups. They're not overly talented, but I just feel like they're going to steal some games at home, and that Spurs basketball is going to come into play at some point during the season where they string off a few wins they shouldn't. And I think they'll be a play-in team. Otherwise, you're looking at Sacramento, you're looking at a few of those other teams we spoke about that we have missing out. I think the Spurs are going to nab a play-in spot just by the grit of their teeth. Pro, what do you think?
Bogues, I agree. I think that they've got pros in their team. They've got winning players in their team. They've got like guys like McDermott, who's I think is a winning player because he does some good things. Like DeJounte Murray and White. It's been a little bit up and down because of injuries and things, but like they've been through the system now. They've got Portal. Portal is good. Keldon Johnson is a very good young player who's been developing every year. He's probably one of the best young players. I know they want to tout Murray and White there and Lonnie Walker. I think that Keldon Johnson is going to be a very, very good player. And then guys like Thaddeus Young, a very underrated pickup. I just think that they've got enough guys. And then let's not forget, they've got, I've got the marketing deal at Lawndale. So I've got people at courtside that's going to have lawnmowers once he starts getting some minutes. And we're going to fucking, we're going to really push the marketing for that fucking asshole. But I think they're good. They got good, they've got good players that could grind out a season. I don't think, I trust them to grind out a season more than I trust Sacramento to grind out a season. When push comes to shove, I think these guys could pull it together and win enough games to get them into that 9-10 spot, and get into the play-in. Now, what happens after that? Who the fuck knows? Talk to me at All-Star break. I'll give you a better assessment. But I think that going into it, I think that they got enough guys that can play. They got enough guys that know how to do the things that they need to do to win, and I think they can get into the 10 spot for sure.
They're not going to beat themselves. That's the thing. They're not overly talented. They're not overly whatever, but they're not going to beat themselves. And that's my exact reason why I've got them in is exactly what you said. I have more faith in them maintaining consistency than a Sacramento or a Minnesota, in my opinion, because I just think, the Spurs organization and the professionalism that they demand on a daily basis, I think that works itself out and they'll win enough games to be a playing team. Houston, lucky last, bounced. They're going to be very, very bad, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very bad.
Yeah, they're going to be rough.
They're in a full rebuild, obviously. Jalen Green, I like, from what I've seen so far. Small sample size, young, athletic, can kind of move about the court pretty elegantly at times. Obviously, Porter Jr. can go both ways. He can be best guy on the court or he can throw a soup at you, so you got to be careful there. And then you got Christian Wood's development has just continued to climb. So they have some really good young pieces. They have a lot of picks coming up. They're similar to that OKC situation, in my opinion, where they got a lot of young assets. They're in it for the long haul with a full rebuild, but it will be ugly this season for them, bro.
Bogues, I'm checking out the Houston Rockets depth chart. They've got Jock Lawndale as their fifth center. Did he fucking get traded? We didn't know about it?
Where'd you see that?
I screenshot it. I'm going to send it to you. Right now, I'm sorry, Lawndale. You've been traded. Woj didn't even break this one. I'm going to break it before everybody. It at least says it on ESPN. They obviously fucked up. I just want to look at their depth chart so I'm not missing anybody. But they got Lawndale they got Jock as their fifth center. So,
jeez.
Congrats to Lawndale.
Yeah, there are some connections there with assistant coach Will Weaver and the national team. Maybe something's gone ahead and we don't know about it.
Well, maybe he took a left when he should have taken a right. The fucker ain't the smartest fucker on the planet. Maybe maybe he just showed up to Houston's camp. Yeah. But I don't think they're going to go anywhere. They're way too young. They don't really, besides Gordon, they don't really have that pro that's going to really, they don't have enough good older players to sort of take those young guys to another level, nor do they want to be right now. Although they've got all those picks out in the wind with the trades they made. So it'll be interesting to see, what's going to happen with those things. But I like Jalen Green. I think he's played okay, a little inconsistent to be expected. But he'll get better. He's an offensive talent, but he has no idea about what it takes to be a pro yet. And it's going to take him some time. Their best asset in the roster is Steven Silas, their coach. He's really good, really smart guy, but they've got, they need a lot of help, and it's going to take time. You got Jalen Green, you got Porter. Actually, the European kid's not bad too. Sengun. Is it Alperen Sengun?
Decent.
Yeah, strong kid. He's averaging 8 and 5, 6'10" kid. I think they just drafted him 16th last year. So, in this past year's draft, they're going to be, they're playoff bounced. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the league, but they'll be talented at times. They'll be good at times because they get up in the open court and run and do some things. But it's going to take some time, man. It's going to take.
Former Sydney King, Jason Tate there too. He's having a pretty decent start to the year, and he had a great year last season. So there are a few pieces I'll watch, but I think they're not going to win many games. It's just they're in a full rebuild, and we'll see how they go. Hopefully the tank doesn't last 4 or 5 years like some of these tanking teams do. It can just be a 1 or 2 year tank, and then they can get better, but we'll see. Team values, pro. That's our wrap. So we've done our Western Conference. That's our wrap. You can give a shit in about 6 months' time when we're wrong about most of it, but that's our wrap. Team values were announced this week, pro. Did you catch those by any chance?
So this is I'm just reading the run sheet now. Is this a value in billions?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yep. So.
Oh wow.
So the Knicks caught me by surprise. I didn't think they'd be up there. I thought the Lakers would be, but anyway, I'll read these out in order from the most expensive valuation. New York Knicks 5.8 billion, Golden State Warriors 5.6 billion. LA Lakers 5.5 billion. Then it takes a massive drop to Chicago at 4th, who are 3.65 billion. Boston at 3.55 billion. The Clippers at 3.3 billion. Brooklyn 3.2 billion. I thought they'd be a little higher. Houston at 2.75 billion. Dallas 2.7, and then Toronto, funnily enough, snuck into the top 10 at 2.48 billion. I guess the Lakers I thought would be clear number one just because they're a worldwide brand. But I guess just the population of New York itself eats that up. And then having Toronto in there was a little surprising, being an international team. And Brooklyn, I thought, were a little low. But other than that, some pretty glaring numbers there, pro.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Boston, the new owners took over. When I started working in Boston, they bought the team for $372 million, and they had 20 owners to get it done. The New York thing, Golden State, obviously, we know because of them winning. The New York, I wonder if that took into account the Madison Square Garden, the value of that piece of property plus the team.
Do they own the network, Madison Sports?
Yeah, they own the network. Yeah, the owner, his dad invented or started Cablevision. So basically started cable network in New York. So literally, I keep saying, if he loses $100 million, he'll raise cable 10 fucking cents and make his money back a month. His dad, I read about his dad in a bunch of documentaries about how they started Cablevision and putting all these cable stations together into packages and stuff. So yeah, but Madison Square Garden and all that's got to be sort of factored in. And then, it's interesting, these evaluations, the Clippers, they don't even own their own building yet, and they're at $3.3 billion. I mean, remember just a few years ago, they sold it for $2 billion, which it wasn't, on the street, it wasn't even worth $2 billion, but it was forced out, when Sterling got forced out, they forced a sale and they got it at $2 billion without even owning their own building. They obviously they rented from the Lakers in Staples. So yeah, it's interesting what's going on with these evaluations. It's hard to figure, but it's pretty cool to see Toronto up there in the top 10.
Yeah, it was. That was an interesting one, but one that might be on the way down, pro, could be the Phoenix Suns. So there is some pretty crazy rumors swirling. Is it Robert Sarver, the owner there of the Phoenix Suns? He hasn't been a well-loved owner. He's been He's been criticized previously for not wanting to pay guys, doesn't like giving big contracts out. We have seen they have not extended DeAndre Ayton, so that fits the MO of what they do there. But there's some allegations, this is according to Jordan Schultz, there's some allegations of racism, sexism, and sexual harassment against Phoenix Suns owner Robert Sarver. This report is a monster, he said. As bad as you might think it might be for us to be having this conversation, it's worse. When I was told some of the things that are going to surface in this report, including sexual harassment, it is jaw-dropping. There is just no way with all these people on the record, men and women, that it's going to be able to survive, that he's going to be able to survive this in my eyes. What have you heard over there? There's been some rumors, but just quickly before you go, Phoenix Suns, which I assume was Sarver making them put out a statement denying it all and saying it was all a misinformation campaign and that it's all false, and they have documented proof. I'm not sure how you'd have documented proof of someone not sexually harassing someone or using sexism or racism, but they have documented proof apparently that that's all false. What's going on over there, bro?
Bogues, it's hard to fucking say. Now, I've heard stories for years about how people hate this owner, and I don't know him. I've never dealt with him, but former GMs, former coaches, former players, former staff members, they've always had a word. Like, top 3 shit show owners in, I'm not pro sports, but in the NBA for sure, his name always popped up. And it just, like, anybody on the planet, this fucking rectangle that we have in our hand, it's recording our every fucking move. And it seems like people don't seem to understand that, it's not the 70s anymore. You just can't buckle everybody down and you can't shut everybody up. It's impossible. This shit gets out. It's going to get out at some point. And, they don't understand with email. Like, what could happen to John Gruden? A fucking email from 10 years ago it took him out of a $60 million in paid money, that he was owed. This shit comes back to you. If you're an asshole, you're an asshole. If you're a cheap fuck, you're a cheap fuck. I could deal with all that stuff. But you got to understand, when you work with people and you're in conversations and you do things and then you start going a little bit nuts on things, you don't think they're going to press record. You don't think that you're in meetings all the time that people aren't fucking recording you, especially if you're acting way inappropriately. It's fucking nuts. But I mean, I read this stuff. It's supposed to be pretty, they said that Ryan McDonough is on the ex-GM's on record. They said Earl Watson's on record. They say a lot of people, 50 people they interviewed for this thing. It's going to get out. It's an interesting story, man. It just, look, go to the games, have a good fucking time, enjoy being an owner. But if you're going to be a fucking asshole, don't be an owner. Be a fucking, a season ticket holder. But you know what? He's going to get paid. They'll force him out, and they'll probably put the team, if this is going to be as big as the Sterling thing, which they said it's going to be bigger from what I've heard. So I assume that they're going to fucking sell the team and whatever it's worth. He'll probably get 20, 30% more. He'll make a little bit of a profit, and then he could just sort of chill.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. I think it's gone. I think with the smoke, there's fire. As soon as these kind of things come out, the NBA's, very progressive with all this kind of stuff. And if these comments are true, that he's gone this crazy with some of these comments and sexual harassment, then obviously, it's deserved. But yeah, I think no matter what he does, the statement that he's put out, it sounds like he's going to try to fight it or try to defend his name. But I think that battle's lost already. I think he's going to lose his team. I think they'll give him overs just to quieten him up and tell him to hit the road. But the Phoenix Suns are going to have a new owner, I think, by next season.
Yeah, I agree. Now, the Sterling thing was interesting because they got him on tape, but then his mental state was in question, where then the judges had to give the wife control of all his money in his estate, so she forced the sale. It'll be interesting how much, because no one thought that Sterling was in his right mind anyway at the end, right?
No doubt. Yeah.
It'll be interesting because this guy's not like Sterling in that sense, where he's got dementia and people question his mentality like that. They'll question his mentality being a fucked up guy, but I wonder how much he could fight this and how long he could keep the team before they force him out. Is it a 2-year ban where he keeps the team but he's banned from it for 2 years or a year? Is it a full we're getting rid of you? Because we don't know what's in that report. I mean, obviously it's going to be big, but it'll be interesting how much his legal team could help him keep the team, and for as long, how long he can keep the team for.
Yeah, but shit, do you want to even keep the team under those circumstances? Like, if most of the players think you're this guy, whether you are or not.
Bogues, you've been around these fucking billionaires, man.
Yeah.
They're the power and money and ego are most of them, not all of them, but most of them are through the fucking roof. They'll fight it to fight it. Now,
Yeah, you're right.
He's been known to be a fucking cheapskate, so he might just want to take the cheap way out and say, well, you know what? They'll probably give it to me for 20 or 30% more than my team's worth. Fuck it. I don't have to fucking pay DeAndre 8 and I'll get the last laugh on him.
Or he hires a lawyer. He hires one of those lawyers you see on the side of a freeway that's no win, no fee.
Yeah, no win, no fee. Captain Jack, the guy with the 2 fucking rifles and the cowboy hat.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I don't know, man. Don't be a fucking asshole. Like, look, you got all this money, you got a fucking great life going. Like, why do you got to do this shit? The sexual harassment. Look, you got money. Ugly guys could get laid all the fucking time if you got money. Like, who gives a fuck? Do you have to sexually harass people? Do you have to fucking be like the racist thing? Like, come on, man. Like, didn't he learn from other people getting caught on this shit that this eventually was going to get out? I mean, if it's one instance, okay, like, maybe you could sweep that under the rug. That's been done before. But, like, this seems like it's a huge fucking thing. Like, emails, texts. You ever heard of a screenshot before? Like, the shit that you send out, and I'm sure there's going to be piles of it that they get in evidence on this report. Like, don't you understand when you're a fucking asshole and you send out vile shit, that shit's going to get recorded, messages, everything that you do is going to get recorded, your phone could get hacked. Like, this shit's going to come back and bite you in the ass. And the problem is if you got family, you got kids.
Yeah,
now your kids got to read about you for the rest of their fucking life.
Well, even when they're older, like, let's say the kids are 4 or 5 right now, and then in 10 years they read the shit. The internet's forever, right? So
yeah,
and I'm sure his kids, whether he has sons or daughters, friends will fucking probably bully him about that shit that your dad's a racist or a sexist. It's just not good, man. But it's all alleged at the moment. We'll wait to see what comes out. But my take is, just a sniff of this tells me that he's going to lose his license, and they'll sell that thing off quickly, and we'll see who the new purchaser is. NBA at 75 pro now. I just want to make this clear. I couldn't give a shit about these kind of awards because I think they're so pointless, and I think there's so much to take into account with different eras and rule changes and blah 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 blah. But I mean, some players have reacted. Klay Thompson is one, and I think he has a point. I think Klay should be in there somewhere. I'd take Klay over Reggie Miller, for instance. I mean, Reggie never hasn't won a championship. Reggie was generally a one-way player, a shooter. He wasn't really known as a defender, whereas Klay plays. So I think Klay has a gripe. I mean, my only other snubs that, for me, I think the biggest snub was Dwight Howard. I think he should be in there. People forget, because of Dwight's carry on the last 5-10 years with some shit that he's done off the court and on the court and had some issues. They forget how good he really was in his prime. He was, I came into the league when he was in his prime. I was a young fella, and he was one of my hardest matchups. He was an absolute beast down there. He was strong as an ox. He was athletic, and he had a much better touch than he had later in his career. So he was confident to go to his hook shots and rolling hooks. So he was tough. And the only other one I'd bring up is Kyrie. I think Kyrie should be in there as well, but I think that was part political with everything going on right now. But give me your take on it. I know you don't probably care about it, just like I do, because I think it's just it's people's opinions and picks, which can be, go either way. But what are your thoughts around it?
Well, my thoughts are the person who ran it should be sent to the fucking mailroom for the rest of their life. How do you get a 75 list, right? I don't give a fuck who's on that list. I don't give 2 fucks. Because you put it up for vote. So, like, whenever you put it up for vote, whatever votes come in, they come in, you don't. But to get to 76 on a 75 list because it was a fucking tie, no. You go back in that fucking room and you get 75. So right off the bat, whoever fucking ran it, you're in the fucking mailroom, you're opening up Christmas cards for the rest of your fucking life. You're in the mailroom.
Fair point.
Yeah, because, come on, give me a fucking break. And then, look, you can't control this shit. That's why, like, when people start coming around on me, top 50 list, top 10, I said, shove that fucking list up your ass, because I give a fuck less. Because I see the game differently than you see it, than this guy sees it, than this girl sees it. We all see it different. And, like, most of the time, you're probably going to forget. You're going to, like, pick a lot of players that are more current than former. You're going to forget a lot of those type players, right?
Recency bias, yeah.
Yeah, it is recency bias for sure. And then also for lists like that, Bogues, I think if you're going to pick players that are still playing, that they need to have some sort of criteria. they have to win like some kind of a combination of a championship, an MVP, a finals MVP, like, or you're not on the list. Like if you're gonna pick, if you're gonna pick guys that are still playing today, I agree with you on the Dwight thing. Like he wasn't as skilled as Shaq, but like everything else, he was just as good as Shaq. Like in his prime, he was fantastic. But yeah, but hey, it is what it is. You had people vote for this, and they vote who they vote for. I don't get upset. I don't lose sleep. I don't give a fuck. If they want to keep Michael Jordan off that list, fine. Whatever you want to do. Whatever you're going to vote for, you vote for.
You know what's interesting, Pro? So the NBA did the top 50 25 years ago, right? I think some of those players didn't make the 75, I believe. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that some of the players that made the top 50 haven't made the top 75. So I thought it'd be just 25 players added, right? Because if they're in your top 50, they're in your top 75, right?
Think about it, Bogues. So 25 years.
There's more players. More players. I get that, but I'm just saying it was just an interesting take because you've made the top 50.
For sure.
How can you not make the top 25? But obviously
there's
more players coming on. But yeah, I thought your action by a lot of people was overboard. And
it's ego.
Even some of the panelists they had voting, you're just like, dude, like my wife could have voted just as well as some of these people, and she watches zero basketball. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Anyhow, moving on. Okay, NBA Europe. This was interesting. So the National Basketball Association said Friday that it had begun negotiations with World Basketball Body FIBA and the EuroLeague about unifying the game in Europe. Organisation of basketball in Europe fractured in 2000 amid arguments over TV rights. As part of our ongoing collaboration with stakeholders, we recently were invited to engage in discussions about how we can work together to grow basketball in Europe. We look forward to participating in subsequent conversations moving forward. That was NBA spokesman Mike Bass. And they continued on with the EuroLeague, the competition which features the continent's best clubs, strenuously denied the report in a Spanish sports newspaper that talks were intended to create an NBA Europe. The subjects discussed in that meeting never included the creation of a division of the NBA in Europe, EuroLeague said in that statement. So there's already a bit of shenanigans going on. Who knows what the truth is, but do you ever see European teams being in the NBA, Pro, or Asian teams for that matter? Do you ever think that's a reality?
I mean, unless it's funded totally by the NBA for the most part, I don't see it. I don't see the economy for a year. First of all, the logistics of it, right? And, obviously the travel and things. And then secondly, the arenas, the infrastructure, the money that you have to pay out for staff, for players, and all of this. I think it's going to be really hard, for NBA team, for European teams to really do that. Now, there's teams like Barcelona and CSKA Moscow and Real Madrid that have, Fenerbahce, maybe FS Pilsen. There are a few teams that, Milan in Italy, there are teams that have big budgets, but you're talking about $100+ million, although they'll probably be in the revenue split. So maybe obviously that, but your ticket sales and your sponsors, I just don't think you have the economic infrastructure that NBA teams have outside of maybe Memphis, New Orleans, and some of the bad, logistic teams in the NBA. But I just don't see how that's going to work unless the NBA is going to fund a lot of it, and I just don't see it. I don't see it working like that. Maybe they can do some things where, they'll maybe step up the exhibition stuff, maybe add a tournament, maybe add a mid-season tournament at some point during the year. I don't know, but I just can't see a full-time European team in the NBA framework. I can't see it.
Yeah, there's just too much logistically. Then you factor in the time differences of guys. The only way they could do it is the conference setup, where there's a conference setup out there, and then they're maybe based in the US for 2 or 3 months, and they go back home and the rest of their conference games are played there. I'm not sure how you do it logistically, but it would be an absolute nightmare to do. It'd be cool to see, but then you also factor in the NBA level of safety in their arenas and everything they go through to protect players. That would be an interesting one in Europe, because some of these arenas, as I've spoken about, David Anderson was being on the pod, numerous different guys. It's a different atmosphere over there, and what you're allowed to do over there compared to, fucking Europe. These courtside ticket holders would be getting red cards every 30 seconds, these fans that get red cards, that get kicked out or get a warning, shit, you'd be warning someone every 10 seconds there, because they're throwing shit on the court, they're lighting flares. So it'd be interesting to see just the clash of cultures, but I don't think it happens anytime soon. I think there's probably some sort of relationship where the NBA agrees to play a certain number of preseason games there, or EuroLeague teams play a certain number of preseason games in the yeah, that's as far as that'll all go. I don't think it's going to get legs further than that.
Can you see Kyrie Irving looking up and seeing, like people throwing like hot pennies at him and fucking batteries at him, and then looking up and seeing cops with semi-automatic weapons and fucking bazookas trying to keep fucking order, and people throwing M80s in the court?
Yeah, Ron Artest, Men of World Peace.
Yeah.
Go down real well.
Yeah.
And then the problem is those people in Europe would actually fight back for the most part. Like,
Without doubt.
They'd want it. They'd be like, yeah, come, So, but yeah, we'll see. We'll watch that space, but I don't think it has that much legs, but it was reported. All right, Enes Kanter, man, the NBA cannot be happy with him, bro. He has called out numerous things this week. He's called out Tibet, free Tibet, and all the political ongoings with Tibet and China. And then he's called out the labor camps, and he labeled as genocide of the Uyghurs in China. He's given a few PSAs on his social media accounts, basically just saying it's a disgrace. China should be ashamed. We need to call them out, blah, blah, blah. And I don't disagree. I think there's some definitely issues over there that need to be sorted out. What has happened since then, China has now cancelled any games that Enes Kanter plays in. He's no longer, with the Boston Celtics basically are no longer exist in China, which is interesting. And the other question is, will LeBron James go on record and call Enes Kanter ignorant and uneducated for his views, pro? What do you think?
LeBron is, can't gauge what he's going to do, what he's not going to do.
Yes, you can, Nike. Oh, sorry. I just had a cough, man.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, man. You know how this stuff is, Bogues. Like, look, they want to use athletes want to use their voice in certain ways, and some use them in productive ways, some not so productive. Well, you could say whatever you want. It's a free country, and in most respects, it's a free country. But there's always going to be repercussions, and what fucks all this stuff up is money. And he can say what he wants to say, but once, look at Daryl Morey, what happened with Houston Rockets. They lost millions of dollars because of him, because of that tweet. And you could say that's right, it's wrong, whatever, but like the reality of it is it lost a lot of money. And, he didn't really get hurt. He went to another team and probably got a raise out of it. But with Kanter, that's what China's going to do. You're going to say something, China's going to cancel your shit, and they're not going to back down with it. And you know how the NBA is. It's going to be, they're probably going to side with obviously the money. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't know what LeBron's going to say. I mean, I wouldn't want to fuck with Enes Kanter though, so I'd be watching out. Anybody will watch out what he says, because he's a fucking tough bastard and he'll come after you. But I don't know, man. I stay out of things like this. I don't really have much of an opinion on it, but it's not going to be pretty for him. Obviously, it's definitely going to hurt him going forward.
Yeah, I wonder if he's got a knock on the door already from the NBA. But goes to your point that you want athletes to be outspoken and talk about things politically for human rights and whatnot. But as long as it doesn't hurt our bottom line, well, unfortunately, this is going to hurt their bottom line. But it's a legitimate issue in the world that needs to be discussed.
Now the problem is, Bogues, the only thing is, if China's only going to take out the games that he plays in, they might still be able to air all 82 games. I don't think he's played yet.
But what about if he's just sitting on the bench, frowned upon?
Actually, they'll just put a filter on. They'll make him look like, they'll make him look like Daniel Theis or something.
Yeah, China's crazy, man. Take it from me. I've been through that fire when I was there, but it just will be interesting to see, because like I just said, man, they want athletes to speak out when it's something that's PR positive, that's a hashtag that's easy to tweet or post or t-shirt or whatever it is. This one's not as easy, and it's a legitimate gripe that he has. There is concentration camps over there that are going on today. There's slave labor going on there today. It's frowned upon that he's spoken out about it because it's going to hurt NBA players' bottom line. That kind of tells me all I need to know about the next time an NBA player comes out with any other kind of hashtag or social agenda, in my opinion. If you're not going to back Enes doing this, I don't want to hear about anything else. But story for another day. Sherwood Strauss with a bombshell, pro. This one is hilarious. It's your boy as well, Woj Adrian Wojnarowski. So apparently he sends his own media stats to potential sources, pro. Did you know this?
No, I read the story. I read the article, but I've never heard of this before.
I urge anyone to go on Sherwood Strauss's Substack. It's probably trending on. You probably get it somewhere for free. Sorry, Sherwood, you're not going to get a sign up from me again, but you probably find it on other news sources outside of ESPN. But apparently he sends a full-on database breakdown of how much views he gets compared to his competitors. Shams and whoever else and blah blah blah, and it's got there's graphs and pie charts and all kinds of shit. I just thought it was pretty petty, man. I just thought you're the best newsbreaker in the game. Everyone knows it. You don't need to pump your own tires, but the fact that he's sending out an A4 printed, full color printed piece of paper to other agents and sources and GMs out there saying, "Hey, you should go with me because I'll get you the most traction." Kind of hilarious, bro. You got to find the humor in it.
Bogues, I just don't I don't understand, like you said, like why it had to be sent out. And then, like, if you do send something like that out, like, obviously in today's age, it's going to get sort of leaked out. Look, to me, the whole competition with with Shams and those guys, like, look, he's on top. I mean, he's obviously the best at what he does. And when you're on top of that level, you're only going to be on top for so long. And that business has become breaking stories. So, you got to have all these sources of information, and it's going to get a little ugly. It's going to get ugly between you and the people you're competing against. It's sort of like the like late night TV or whatever, when those guys were going at it as far as getting ratings and trying to be number one, and they try to outdo each other. So, but it just was interesting, like that, just that document itself, where it came from, who sent it out, whatever. It just, I don't know. It was an interesting deal, but like it's a competitive deal. But that's what pro sports is all about in media. It's about breaking stories. So, it's going to get competitive trying to get people to, you got to get sources, and, you're going to do whatever you can to get sources. But I don't know, man. I just thought it was real strange, the sort of the whole document and send it out deal. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think it's just a bit too much. Everyone knows he's the number one newsbreaker, but to actually be pumping your tires and trying to shit on your competitors, I think is just no need for it, in my opinion. I think, like I said, he's well noted as being one of the better guys out there. And just leave it at that. I just thought it was a funny thing for Sherwood to do. And he's gone a little rogue, pro. He's gone a little rogue once he's left his
Well, Bogues, he fucking talks to you.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. We need more of it. So
yeah.
He's left his big daddy. He was with ESPN, and then he went to The Athletic, and now he's working for himself on Substack. So he theoretically no fucks given on his articles, and basically there's nothing that Woj can really do for him writing for Substack. Can't get him fired. Can't get him pushed away like he did when he joined ESPN and allegedly had a lot of people fired. So interesting route that Sherwood has taken, but I love it. I'm here for it. I got my popcorn out. All right, stats, useful and useless. I'm going to give you two players, pro, that are in this top 75 debate. And I want you to tell me out of these two, which you would put in the 75 and which you wouldn't, okay?
Sure.
All right, player A, 8-time All-Star, 8-time All-NBA, 5-time All-Defense, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, 5-time Rebound Leader, 2-time Block Leader, NBA Champion, 19,000 points, 14,000 rebounds, 2,000 blocks. That's player A. Player B, 8-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA, 4-time All-Defense, 3-time Block Leader, NBA Champion, 13,000 points, 6,000 rebounds, 1,000 blocks. Which one are you putting in?
Yeah, more trusted LeBron teammate on player B too. So I'd probably put in player A, but obviously this is probably a little bit of a trick question.
Oh, is it really? The numbers don't lie. So, okay, for those listening, player A was Dwight Howard. Player B is Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is a fantastic player, but when comparing top 75, Dwight has eclipsed every number that Anthony Davis has achieved to date. The only thing they're similar in is they're both 8-time All-Stars. Dwight is an 8-time All-NBA, where AD is only 4. 5-time All-Defense, AD only 4. They're both 3 times block leaders. Sorry, Dwight's 2, AD's 3. Both champions, but then 13K points versus 19K. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer that Dwight's in. And that's the argument that people had. And there's some conspiracy theories around. That's why they had their argument on the bench, pro. Who knows if that's true, though, but it could potentially be the reason why. But yeah, that's just another thing to break down. It's recency bias. The Dwight we see today is not the Dwight Howard, prime Dwight Howard. And the Anthony Davis we see right now is pretty much the prime Anthony Davis. So recency bias does play its way. That was a useful stat, wasn't it? Broke it down nicely.
Pretty useful. Those are your Muse guys or Stats Muse, or is there someone else?
Stats Muse, baby.
Oh, nice. They better start giving us some fucking sponsorship money, man.
I'll send you a t-shirt, 8XL t-shirt I'll send you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Strauss, too.
Strauss isn't sending us shit. He's not sending us nothing.
I think you're at least worth 12 to 15,000 for him. That cheap prick better start sending you some fucking checks.
Just a subscription.
Yeah.
Just a sub, pro. It's not asking too much.
We're going to substack him out of fucking existence if you don't start fucking sending us some fucking sponsorship.
We'll send Woj's address and phone number. All right, next stat. The Heat destroyed the champs by 42 tonight. The biggest Heat win in the last 25 seasons. That's also the biggest loss by the Bucks under Mike Budenholzer and the second biggest in his coaching career. Useful or useless?
Pretty fucking useless. It's one game.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it was a pretty cool win or whatever, but pretty useless in my opinion. One game. Early season, no one gives a fuck. Everything's been, up is down, down is up, left is right, right is left. So I think it's pretty useless, but what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It's useless, but it's just interesting that it's his biggest loss under the Bucks, and you just don't see a champion from the previous year get smacked by that much early in the season generally. You see a bit of a hangover period just from the celebration and whatnot. It takes them some time to start, but they're not usually getting thumped by 42. That's the only reason I thought it was interesting, but yeah, it's a useless one. Next one, Russell Westbrook's career usage was 32.7%, his usage rate. His usage rate last night was 19.3%. It was also his third ever triple single, less than 10, 10, and 10 when playing 35 plus minutes of his career. Useful or useless stat, bro?
It's pretty useful just to figure out usage without, before he joined this team versus what he's been doing, even though it's a small sample size. It's an interesting deal. Plus, first triple single with 35 plus minutes is interesting. I think it's a useful stat just because it's good to gauge it if they're trying to make changes of how to really maximize wins versus how to use him. So I think it is a useful stat because playing with LeBron and AD, it's going to be different. It's a different type of player than playing with, KD or James Harden early on in his career or later on in his career. So it'll be an interesting deal of how they use him and how they adjust his usage rate.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's useful just because it shows for Russell to be effective, he needs the ball. He needs a lot of the ball, which is why I still question this move by the Lakers. I mean, arguably, I would think Buddy Hield would probably be a better acquisition than Russ on that roster with LeBron and Davis, just because he's a feet-set three-point shooter. Can provide more if he needs to be, but story for another day. But I thought it was useful just based on for him to be successful and put up Russ numbers, he's going to need a lot more touches, and then that's taken away from AD and LeBron. So we'll watch that space. What do you got? Fact or fake news?
Bogues. Lakers wins more games in the regular season than the Clippers do.
Oh, that's a good one. The LA rivalry. Oh, I think the Clippers. Fake news. I think the Clippers win more. I'm not sure. I think it's going to take the Lakers a little while to figure this out. There's going to be injuries. AD's going to get hurt at some point. LeBron's not getting any younger, but I think they're going to have to figure things out on the fly, and unfortunately, it's going to be some losses for him. So I think the Clippers, as you mentioned earlier in this podcast, they're a bit more used to each other. They've played together. They've got that camaraderie. So I think the Clippers have more wins at the end of this season, bro.
Yeah, Bogues, I agree. I think it's fake news. I don't think the Lakers really give a fuck about the regular season. I think they're really trying to get in. Well, it's weird because I say fake news, but I say they care about just getting home court advantage, at least in the top four. But I don't think the Lakers and Clippers will finish in the top four, so it is interesting. But I will say they don't really give a fuck about the regular season. I think they want to rest their guys. They just want to gear up for the playoffs. So they'll take, missed opportunities to win games as long as they're not sliding way down the line where they have to play a 1 seed or a 2 seed. So in the playoffs, but preferably have a home court advantage. But I think the Clippers are more built to win regular season games, especially if they're not going to be resting guys. They don't have to deal with the Kawhi Leonard. Well, he will be fucking rested most of the year because of his injury, but they don't have to worry about the inconsistency of the lineup. I think most of those guys will play a lot of games. So I think they will win. I think it's fake news. I think the Clippers will win more than the Lakers. Minnesota makes the playoffs. Top 10, not 8.
Well, yeah, fake news. Fake news based on my assessment of Minnesota. I think they'll be close. They'll be in that battle with Sacramento, them, San Antonio, but I have San Antonio. So I'll say fake news for Minnesota, pro.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit scary to be trying to be lined up with you as far as as we keep on agreeing, and it's getting a little scary. But yeah, I agree with you. I think they're going to challenge. I really do. I do like their team, but young teams like that, although I do like having Townsend, I'm not a big Russell fan, but those guys are talented. And they've won some games before, not a lot of them, but they've had some history of being decent. But I still don't think they're going to make the top 10. So I'm going to say it's fake news as well. All right, Portland gets out of the first round.
Fake news. That's if they even get there. But yeah, fake news. I think they're not getting out of the first round.
Yeah. I agree. We're 3 for 3 tonight.
3 for 3, baby. Yeah. But yeah, I just don't think like I said, I think they could sneak a couple of games against a 1 seed or a 2 seed. But other than that, they're going to be at the bottom of the West. They're going to be facing a very good team. You've got the offensive firepower to light up on any given night, but defensively, they don't show me enough defensively. They've got a new coach. There's a distraction of Dame being in or out. There's a distraction of CJ being on the block for Ben Simmons. So I think that thing is not going to end well. And I think if they make the playoffs, that's an achievement for them with that roster, bro.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bogues. I don't see it. I just don't think they guard enough. I don't think they're good enough. They're probably going to be challenging for play. They're probably going to be challenging for a play-in, situation, and then they got to get out of a play-in situation to, a regular playoff series, and then you're talking about a 7 or 8 seed. And then I don't see them knocking off a 1 or a 2 seed. And I think that team will be very much different with a lot of different staff and a lot of different players coming into next season. Not this season, but next season. So I don't see them getting out of the first round.
Exactly right. All right, that wraps up episode 39 of the Robos basketball series. For the Q&A section, we're just going to leave it on call-in this week. So we urge you to jump on the call-in app if you want to hear answers to some great questions that we had. We generally do these around about 11 o'clock, about 12 o'clock Sydney, Melbourne time in Australia, and it's roughly about 8 p.m. Texas time, give or take. We do those on Sundays, usually Sundays Australian time, Saturday nights American time. So feel free to join us. We've got a lot of fans joining and asking us questions. But that will wrap up this week, Pro. We will see you next week.
See you guys later. Thanks, folks.